Now, what I tell kids is there's a ladder, and the ladder stands like that, and you have the bottom rung is available to you the minute that you leave school. And whether you pull the ladder over on top of yourself with drugs, booze or whatever, or just laziness, the ladder keeps falling backwards. If you want to get up the ladder until you're up the top and the ladder's level, where you're up there and everything's kosher for you, then you do everything right. You get a good job, you do the whole thing. Now, my old man always reckoned that we had to get an apprenticeship in Westport and work hard. He told me literally, if you don't go to town and get a decent job, you'll never be any good as long as the hole in your ass is pointing downwards. If you go and work in the bush like your mother's brothers with mud up the arse every day. And that was his statement, and I'll never forget it. So, I'm on correspondence, and the correspondence is going not very good at all. And this is my last school report. Now, don't expect you to read the nitty bits, but just read the results of what it is and read the result to me. And this is probably the best piece of paper you can get to know me. You read those all out loud, and when I got that little girl to do it the other day, she broke down and cried. This report, a copy of this, is in the brochure that every tourist gets on the back of their seat when they climb into Mickey Unimogs. So they go through this, and there's lots of photos of me, but this is there too, because I've made myself proud of this. But the other day, when that girl read it out to me, I actually broke down and cried. So I expect you to read those results there, and then the headmaster's statement, while I go and have a leak. You read it loud enough, I'll hear you.
Okay. Just as long as we don't hear you have a leak, so don't do that loud enough. Right, English, unsatisfactory. John has made little real effort. Social studies, unsatisfactory. He should send in complete sets. General mathematics, unsatisfactory. Corrections are to be done, and question done. As asked, he must complete all tasks. General science, fair. He should send a set each fortnight. Health education, fair. The practical work should be done. Music appreciation, fair. John must do all the work set. Design, fair. Drawing, fair. Only 2 sets have been received. General agriculture, unsatisfactory. His work shows a continued failure to apply advice and guidance. Animal husbandry, unsatisfactory. Dairying, unsatisfactory. And the general comments at the end. John's work is quite unsatisfactory in every respect. At this stage...
This
is your comment.
That's my comment.
And John's footnote on his own report card says, at this stage I was running 65 possum traps to the Upper Totra River and doing schoolwork at night. And so this was back in 1956, 2 years before I was born. You were even and you were even totally unsatisfactory back then.
Yeah. Now that shaped my whole life, because the ladder fell right over back on top of me and I couldn't get up. Yeah, I didn't see it like that then, but I can remember my mother's face. The mail came, and of course the old man was shoveling coal for his living and going to the pub and having a few beers after work, and I knew he'd come home after it. And Mum's going down and she's reading it, and she didn't read it out loud. She says, "Oh, John, we can't show this to Dad, can we?" No way the old man ever saw that.
You've kept that all these years?
That's the original copy.
Yeah.
You would have thought I would have thrown it away and burnt it. You know why it wasn't thrown away?
Because you want to prove it wrong?
No, my mother kept it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she kept it. She kept everything. Everything was a record, you see.
Mm.
And I couldn't escape the old man. I had to go to town and get an apprenticeship.
Mm.
So I first went with Jack Kilkenny, spray painting cars.
Yeah.
And there was this fella, Des Richards, that was painting the cars and I was sanding them. And I wasn't mud up to here, I was just cold water. And because I'm sanding cars, I'm not warm and working out in the bush like I'd love to be. I'm there between the town clock and the Friendly's Hall. And right there beside me was this big concrete monolith that used to go every 15 minutes, ding dong, ding dong. And it'd count the time, you see, the town clock. And you imagine working there, wet to here and cold, with that noise going on. And Jack Kilkenny had about 100 budgies in a little cage. And they used to squeak and squawk and scraggle. And behind was a brick garage with a hole in the top of it. And out through that hole come coloured paint. That was Des Richards painting cars. Sometimes his hat would fall off, or he'd forget to put it on, and he'd come out the colour of the car that he was painting. It was bloody horrible, and I could see it. But anyway, one day Mum come to me. Well, Kilkenny come to me after the 3 months trial and says, Johnny, he says, you're not enjoying this, are you? And I says, no, not at all. He says, why don't you go and work in the bush like your uncles? I said, Dad won't let me. He said, well, your dad's not going to control you for the rest of your life, just stay strong. So I went and worked in the railway for 9 months. That was good. That was good because I was apprentice guard. Cleaning the women's toilets wasn't bad, but cleaning the men's toilet was worse because they had a penny slot to go into the toilet. And sometimes those jokers, if they were a bit drunk, they'd do their business on the floor and put the penny in the top of it, you know. And I almost died twice there. Got caught between wagons while shunting, but I used to love going out the abattoirs on the abattoir shunt because it was a 2-mile journey. You sat standing on the cow catcher of a WW locomotive doing 70 miles an hour at full speed, pushing cattle. That was good fun. Yeah. But then Mum come to me one day and said, Johnny, this is just what you're looking for. And there's an advertisement, wanted, junior woodsman, Golden Downs Nelson. So she applied for me and we got the direct results. When I climbed onto Newman's bus at Westport, that's where the New World supermarket is now, she gave me this little camera. She said, Johnny, you're going to have an interesting life, take lots of photos, and which I have. And that's the result. When I was at the Downs for 12 months, Mum and Dad bought the farm across near the beach that Bruce has got now, Les Powell's farm. And Bruce didn't want it because he was an apprentice engine driver in Westport, so I had to come home and buy the old family farm. At just over 16 years of age, I was the proud owner of a 322-acre property. Pay as you can. So yeah, I milked the 35 cows and couldn't make enough money because every bloke travelling up and down the Buller heard about this place that you could go and have a free night's board and there'd be plenty of booze. It became known as the Boar's Nest and there was a lot of alcohol drunk, so milking 35 cows wasn't enough. I had to go and get a job with Hardy and Thompson's working in the bush, and that was over here at the bottom of Madman's Creek. Before the road came anywhere near coming over here, I was actually in the crew when we built the road over the top of the hill. And there was Horse Henriksen, my brother Val, Colin Dalkey, mostly young fellas, and we worked in the bush up here and had a hell of a good time because this is all flat land and easy logging. We had timber stacked over halfway up the spar tree most of the time, so we could get away hunting all the time. And we had one deer hanging up here every week. Every Monday morning someone would come up early and shoot a deer and would split it up between the road crew, which was old Alf Agent and Jimmy Stewart at the time, and we'd have the other leg and the back stakes hanging in the bush hut. We had a 10-gallon drum as a fire with a big flat plate on the top. We just used to throw the steak on the top of the plate for the first half of the week. second half of the week we'd make a big stew, and that'd be there for the rest of the week. And we lived on venison stew while we worked in the bush. Yeah.
So was deer quite plentiful back then?
Not as plentiful as they are just now, but plentiful enough because back in those early 60s there wasn't so much money in commercial hunting. I used to go and hunt on the mountains and everything for skins. I also hunted for the bounty. I don't think I've got that. There is a photo of me around somewhere with a heap of deer ears hanging on my belt down in that other shed. But that one over there, that photo's taken in 1958, somewhere up round the Downs.
Mm.
This one's in 1960 on the Motueka tablelands. I skinned deer for the skins and the bounty then.
Mm.
We got, for some strange reason, the Buller Forestry paid out on the ears of deer and the tails of goats. So we used to take the ears and a strip of skin across the top of the head. And yeah.
So could you make good money back then doing that, or was it just...
Oh well, 3 and 6 was 3 and 6 was actually 5 beers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No,
I have no idea. I'm not as old as you.
7, 8 ounce beers. Yeah, and because of the camaraderie that was about then, and men were drinkers.
Yeah.
Then when you come out of the bush, you were in the pub.
Yeah.
It's like the boar's nest. The only law I had at the old house when I had the farm down there was all firearms had to be in the back porch, never come any further into the house than the back porch. There'd been anything up to a dozen firearms in that house. Those days, blokes travelled with their firearms, just like you see me travelling there.
Mm.
Camera on the string and rifle over the shoulder. And all bushmen were seen to do that. You'd walk through Westport in those days and you'd see 2 or 3 blokes walking along the road with their rifle over their back.
Mm.
Bolt magazine missing, of course. Yeah.
So how many in your family that you grew up, mum and dad, and how many kids?
Well, there's 7 of us in the family. Me, Val, Bruce, Robert, Kevin, Amelia and Rosemary.
And where did you fit in that lineup?
I was second from the top. That's how I come to get off of the farm after Bruce turned it down.
Yeah. So what was it like back in those days?
Charleston?
No, being part of a big family growing up compared to now.
Well, we were like everyone else. We were very short of money. There was no money about. The old man mostly dug coal for Neil Mowat, hand-loaded coal. And we walked to Charleston to the school. It was a walk of, it would be 3.5 miles, I suppose. And we didn't often have shoes or anything. We used to kick old Minnie Hampton's cows. They'd sleep on the corner by Ben's Dam, and we'd give them a kick in the guts and make them stand up so they'd have a crap, and we could stand in the crap to get our feet warm. And school was always beautiful, but I used to get the strap nearly every day, and my school reports from that period are similar to my last school report. Tony Bedina was the teacher. John's work will improve when cleanliness and tidiness are observed. His work always has dirt smudges on it. And at that stage, I used to go down the back of the school, up into the gold workings that were full of water, where there were giant cockapoo. And if you turned over old cow manure or logs and things, you'd find grubs, and I'd be feeding the giant cockapoo, and the next thing little Lucy would ring the bell. It was her job. And I'd be at least 5 minutes away from the school, running like hell, stone bruising, cutting my feet to prickles, and not time to wash my hands before I got in. Mr. Medina used to give, he had a stick 2 feet long, thick as your thumb, down to as thick as your finger, tapered, with a hole burnt through it, and a piece of leather bootlace tied to it so as you couldn't take it off him. And he run it across your hands, across on that angle. Now, if you moved your hand and got it across the thumb, you bruised it. If you moved it the other way and across these two here, you broke them. and I still shiver. Yeah. Because I'd be a minute for every stroke of the stick. And I used to do my best to get there before the bell went, but I seldom did it. Nearly every day. But we were lucky. We had a saltwater aquarium in the school, which is where the motor camp is now. And every day at dinner time, 2 of the boys were allowed to go down to the beach and bring back as much seawater as we could in 2 kerosene tins each. He'd keep us on the balance, and he'd put thicker handles on them to make them comfortable, and we'd change the salt water in the aquarium. We had a little baby octopus in there for months and months. And there, he was a good teacher. He really took us out and showed us all about nature and that. And I was fortunate in another respect that I had an uncle, Uncle Jack. He was one of Mum's brothers, and he had rheumatic fever when he was a kid, age 11, and it played havoc with his baby making machinery, and it didn't work. So he married Auntie Bertha. That's a big story in itself, but they lived. Uncle Jack was a bushman. He didn't finish his education, and he loved the bush. He loved hunting and fishing. And when I was about 7, 8, 9 or 10, he lived at Rahui. Now, I wouldn't go to school on my first day unless Uncle Jack pushed me on, took me on his push bike, doubled me. But that was to the South School. We didn't come to Charleston until I was 5 and a half when we moved to Charleston. But I went to Uncle Jack and Auntie Bertha's at Rahui, and I'd increased the town's population by 1/3. Now, Uncle Jack worked in the sawmill that was operated by steam. The Loki that pulled the logs from the winch bank was operated by steam, and the winch was operated by steam. And most of the time I was allowed to chop wood for the winch in the bush, carve my logs, or chop up the slabs, load them on the Loki to take them round to feed the winch. And there were many good things about Rahui. There was a Maori fellow by the name of Charlie. Charlie would come from Christchurch. He'd been a railway worker all his life, a ganger, and he had free travel anywhere he wanted to go in New Zealand. Because of that, his wife was crook with cancer in Christchurch, and he had remodelled the mine manager's house. He'd shifted everything into the lounge by the fire. He'd knocked the chimney down and knocked the brick chimney over and made a tin chimney like this. So and he had the water right there that ran through a hole in the floor, so he didn't have to go out the kitchen. He had everything here in front of the fire. And I used to go and sit with Charlie when the men were working in the bush or the mill. If it was a wet day, I'd go and sit with Charlie. He taught me many, many things. One of the things he taught me was how the Maori carried fire. Did you know how the Maori carried fire?
No.
No. Well, it was a fungus that lives in the bush, and that fungus grows up on big black birch trees. You've probably seen the thing hanging off birch trees way up there. Wonder what it was. When it comes down and hits the ground, it's like a big soft, soggy hunk of cardboard. When it's dry, it weighs nothing.
Yeah.
Now, you don't get much birch trees, our birch trees in the North Island. The Maori carrying greenstone, Paunamu, to the North Island, carried that dried out on the top of their packs because it weighs nothing. And that was tradable material. That was almost as valuable as greenstone.
Wow.
Charlie told me this. Now, how does that carry fire, you might ask?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Another one.
Now it's burning.
Uh-huh.
Now I could go to Westport and only burn half of that. It's burning.
It's another one. So we've got 3 in here now.
What's going on? Outside, outside, good girls.
That's amazing. And that'll just smoulder away until...
Now, when it spreads, it'll keep spreading. See, last time I was explaining it, I set fire to it just there, see? Now, that'll spread, so what I'll do, I'd have, if I was a Maori and I was carrying it, I'd have it in a completely waterproof container, tightly woven, or sealskin container, mower skin container. They use skins, and as I travelled along, I'd be the slave, and I'd have orders from the chief that if we were leaving Cape Fowon to come to Rahui at this end of the 9 mile, I 2 rivers to cross, and I got to get there and get the fire going and have that all set up for the chief when he gets there. Otherwise, I'll be eating for tea tomorrow night. That's how Charlie explained it to me. Now, as I go along, I've got to keep it well above the rivers as I cross. When I get there, I blow it and get it hotter and hotter, and then get some little bits of grass, which I'm carrying in the same basket with me. But you see it's spreading. Now, if I leave it spread, it'll just keep going. So I wet my finger and put it out, but leave it going over there. It's gone from here, and it keeps spreading. So that's how he carried the fire. Now, that was taught to me, and Charlie told me, he said, the white man is a fool, but he brought the flint with him, and we didn't need this anymore. He was so interested in learning about mower bones that he didn't ask us about how we carried the fire around. We were too busy chasing around the bush finding mower bones for them, because all those blokes, all they wanted to do was learn all about what the mower was, because surely it wasn't a bird, not that big, but yes, it was. There was another couple of things that Charlie taught me. Now, what is a taiaha purpose?
That was for warning, wasn't it? For
A taiaha?
yeah, for the
Dancing up to people?
Clubbing. It was a weapon.
Yeah, for what?
Breaking mower leg bones.
That's dead right. Yeah, who told you that?
I did a stint when I was teaching kids at the museum from Canterbury. I think I learnt it there.
They had spears. In the museum they've got spears. Yeah.
Jeez, I had to dig deep for that memory. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Charlie told me, and I've told a few people since. But yeah.
Sie hierher. Du kannst kaum schaffen. Du musst einfach so hinsetzen und dann kriegst du es richtig
Ich
dran.
kann das nicht mit meinem Rücken hier sitzen. Das ist
Du kannst dich hier anlehnen.
nee, weh. Nein, das möchte ich nicht.
Du klebst nicht fest.
Hey, cold beer.
Staubig, das ist alles. Komm her, wir tauschen.
Ja.
Now I try and get on to most more important things. But Rahui was a good one for me because Uncle Jack was only dedicated to being a bushman and a hunter and an outdoorsman. So he taught me all about the bush, the same as Charlie. Charlie reckoned that Rahui was the best hunting ground in New Zealand, so Rahui featured big in my upbringing.
So where's Rahui?
You're just above Berlin's, across the river.
Ah, right.
Yeah, when you're going up the gorge, if you slow down on the rocklands and look back behind you, you'll see a patch of pine trees in there now.
Yeah.
Coal mines and sawmills in there. That's all there ever was. Yeah. So yeah, I shot my first deer at Rahui at the age of 11 with a 12-gauge shotgun.
Tell us about that.
Well, we used to go out. Normally, Uncle Jack wouldn't allow me to shoot at a deer or anything. But we were gonna work the big island outside Rahui. There's a huge island covered in willow trees and things, and that long river grass. And of course, you can't see the deer in the long river grass, but we used to go one to one end and one to the other. Normally I'd beat down through the island, banging sticks on trees and yelling and carrying on, and the deer would go to the bottom end and then cross the dry wash into the big bush. So Well, this day Uncle Jack set me up. He says, you go down to the bottom end and I'll go up the top end. And he said, when the deer come out, he says, don't shoot any hinds, just a fat young spiker. And if there's not a fat young spiker, shoot a fat young hind. So anyway, I went down there, and after about half an hour or so, I could hear Uncle Jack coming and bashing things and yelling and singing more than yelling. And sure enough, out come 4 or 5 deer, and there was a fat little spiker there, but he was behind a couple of the other deer, and I couldn't get a good shot of him for a start, but eventually they started to move off, and I got a good shot into his heart with the shotgun. And that shell that I used was only black powder, and it was an old National Arms lever action shotgun. And we'd taken out all the number 2 shot and poured it back in with melted candle wax at the same time, which was our solid slug, and it dropped him like a rock from about 30 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a 6.
How many deer do you think you've shot in your career?
There's something that I've never ever tried to put it's got to be in the thousands. And one of the better weekends we had was in the Kakapo. We used to go to the Kakapo, the head of the Karamea, down as far as the Lunar Slips. And we got 174 between 5 of us in a 4-day weekend. 1963. Yeah, I think it was 62 or 63. 174 in one weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, so
174 deer in a weekend.
4 days.
In 4 days.
Yeah, 5 of us. Yeah, all members of the Buller Deer Stalkers Association.
It's a lot of deer.
It is a lot of deer, but then those deer were so thick up in that area that they were bred down to almost not much bigger than goats. Yeah,
So not enough food supply.
they're pretty much eating everything out. They must have come up and down in waves. And one of the heads that we found on a rock was a 6-pointer, and it was as big round as a Jersey cow's head. And it was sitting up on a rock. Somebody had shot it and put it up on the rock, and the meat had all rotted away. And I said, I'd like to take that. And Marquis says, no, it's not yours, it's up on a rock. Somebody's coming to get it. So I left it there. I only wish now that I had bought it. But I hunted early days for skins, bounty, skins, and then meat, of course.
Rooster.
Yeah, that's a bird flying past.
No, that's that naughty rooster there.
Yeah, but when they go, grrr, as if a big something high flies over,
Is that what it is?
it's a warning sign, yeah. And feeding families and the meat hunting thing made me go hard. Yeah. Not that there was ever a lot of deer around this particular area, but I could get well back there and get them. I made a lot more. Here, outside. Outside, you're going to come in here and shake all over everybody. Go on. She's soaking wet. I made a lot more money out of catching feral goats in the mid-80s. For a couple of years there, a nanny, you could get $250 for a black nanny. And go down $200 for a black and white, right down to $70 for a ginger. But the stock and station agent convinced the farmers, this is how I see it happen, if they paid $5,000 or $7,000 for a South African or a Tasmanian purebred Angora or Kashmir goat, and then you crossed it with a feral goat straight out of the bush, you had, after the first cross, a G4. And then the next cross from that progeny would be a G3. So after 3 crosses, which would take you probably 2.5 years, your progeny then, if you put purebreds over them, would be a purebred. And you'd have Kashmir and Mohair. Of course, it didn't work, because what happened was that every farmer convinced themselves that this was going to be the big money, so they all bought these feral goats from everywhere. the farmers that had money straight away imported purebred nannies as well as billies. So a lot of farmers ended up with these paddocks full of G2s, G3s and G4 and feral goats. And they put them in sheep paddocks, which is good enough for sheep, but not necessarily good enough for goats because they walk up to stay posts and jump over.
Yes.
So in the finish, the whole thing collapsed, and we've got goats spread over New Zealand and further places than we've ever had them. It was an amazing thing. But me and a mate were going into the bush, Punakaiki, Bullet Creek, Parari, up an isle here, this river, and on a fine day, we'd bring 16 goats out, 8 each. And so and people say, how can you get 8 goats out, 8 feral goats out of the bush? And if you look at the photographs, you'll see. And other people drag them and carry on and swear at them and carry on. But a goat is a natural animal that'll walk in front of you. Now, if you bite its ear or give it a bit of a scruff around the face and give it a bit of a tap on the nose and then let it go, it'll walk in front of you and pull away from you because you've got the dogs behind, and then you go from the biggest, toughest down, and the little ones will just naturally follow you. You've got the main one tied on your left hand and all the rest on the string on your right hand. And you can walk 8 goats down a riverbed, through the bush. It's only when you get to the river that you get trouble. When you've got that many goats on board, you shorten them up, turn them round, pull their heads up over your shoulders so their feet are nearly off the ground at the front, and you march through the river. And we were bringing up to 16 a day out, and we could only run 3 days a week. That's how that. And we started wearing sand shoes instead of boots because they wore out that quick. And we would leave, like a Bullet Creek or say Canoe Creek at Barrytown. We'd leave the main road at 7 o'clock and run to the top of the mountains, have a sleep till about 2 o'clock, and work our way back down catching goats. Pick up the odd one that we'd caught on our way up. We taught our dogs not to touch the billy goats, and in the finish we had to muzzle them. And on a wet day like this, we'd both head up to creeks like Madman's Creek that are all covered in bush, hit the bush until we got 1 each, and that would be our day's work. But that was huge money.
So what's you said that about your report, which was clearly quite unsatisfactory, that you're quite proud of that.
Well, the fact that I was making more money than my father.
Yeah.
And Dad was working in a coal pit shoveling coal, which was pretty hard work. I went all the way up the Little Tota and I was trapping possums, skinning the really good ones and doing the tokens on the rougher ones. And Mum was stacking them out for me and sending them away to the possum bounty officer in Wellington and making reasonably good money. I actually smashed my right thumb at the age of 7 trying to set a possum trap once. I'd seen this big trout in the Nile. It was behind a big rock and it was a huge trout. It was about 8 or 10 pounds, and I thought, I've got to get one of those Devon spinners. So I went into the sports shop and Colonel Fountain showed me he said the brown Devon had worked the best in the Nile, just as it's starting to come up in flood, he said. So I come home and I couldn't get 2 and 6. I couldn't get tuppence together, let alone 2 and 6. So I first said, well, I can catch a possum and sell it to Uncle Paddy or Uncle Charlie, you see. And Uncle Paddy says, I'll give you 2 and 6 if you bring me a big, good possum. So I went over into the shed and there's Uncle Charlie's possum traps. There was heaps of the things. He had hundreds of them. And I tried to set possum traps and some of them I couldn't even start the spring. But there were some that had sort of rolled over spring. And I got that down and I was standing on top of it almost with both feet. And I was pushing the levers. I'd seen Uncle Paddy set possum traps with his hand, just squeeze them and flick, flick, flick. And Uncle Charlie used to just stand on them. I was halfway through this process and the trap went off and it got my thumb right here. And it completely crushed the thumb. The possum trap was actually quite shut. Mum arrived duly because I was screaming blue murder, as you can imagine it. She got the trap off my thumb and it's still flat and just sort of hanging there. So she says, "Oh, John," she says, "I'm sorry we can't get to town. Can't get into Newman's bus on Monday afternoon coming back from Greymouth." She says, "I'll have to fix it for you." So she got Brucey to hang on to me round the waist, and she got the thumb and she reshaped it, just like that. Then she split a peg and tied on either side of it. And Mr. Medina wanted to give me the strap with the other hand because I couldn't write anymore. Yeah.
I don't know if this was a very nice school teacher at all.
He was a beautiful school teacher.
He hit you with
And
a stick.
it still clicks. And it hurts when it clicks. Yeah. And my logging career, when I went back in the bush here, my logging career went through from Hardy and Thompson's to Taronga Bay Sawmilling Company. Now, Hardy and Thompson's worked up through here. I would have stayed with them forever, but when we just got the bridge across, there was a downturn in the timber industry, and they closed down this bush. They kept the other one going, and I had to go and work for Taronga Bay Sawmilling Company over there. But anyway, because I always worked in the bush during the day in shorts, my back started to pack it in. So I found that if I went and got an easier job in the winter time, so I got a job on the Marine Department, and that job was firing the dredges. I fired both coal-fired dredges, the Marwera and the Eileen Ward, and I took them for surveys. I became an exceptionally good fireman. So even when I wasn't working for them, and if they were taking one of them round for survey, they'd get me out of the bush. They'd get me time off from the bush to go and fire one of these dredges round to Littleton and back. One time we waited 7 weeks for the weather to come back. That was good pay. Yeah.
So what do you like if you had to measure your life, like a school report, would you see
I
as
wouldn't change a thing.
You wouldn't change. What do you see
No.
as your greatest? What's the greatest thing you've taken away from your life?
Well, there's so many highlights. Tourism was a big thing in my life right from the word go. While we were logging here, in 1960-61, we started, because we had timber stacked up around the spar tree, we were cutting the back boundary for Hardy and Thompson's across to between these two rivers. And one day we went down a little creek and we came to the Ananui, which promptly went underground. So the next day we went back with torches and explored, and that was the Ananui Caves, which is world famous tourist attraction now. So we went back and had a bit of an explore, not very much. And I kept going back with tourists and showing people through. I used to go to the Charleston pub on a Friday night, and if there was anybody called in, usually a couple, and if they were young enough people, they'd want to go to have a look somewhere, and I'd used to charge £5 a head for as many tourists as I'd get. I'd take them through the hole in the wall, through the caves, Split Apple Rock, wherever they wanted to go, I'd give them a day's touring, and promptly spend the money at the pub that night. But that was always good because it helped me along with my farming. I never lost sight of the old farm down there. And the highlight, there's just been one highlight after the other. I was in the Deer Stalkers Association virtually from 1959 right through, and we were packing the National Film Unit up the Mokanui because they'd decided to do a publicity movie on deer hunting in the Mokanui Valley. And there was a National Film Unit bloke, Grant Foster, and he had an assistant called Hugh McDonald. And when we came back out, we did the usual Deer Stalkers Association trauma of going first to the Seddonville pub, then the Mokanui pub, then the Knockawa, then the two at Granity, then the Waimang, then the Pines, then the Pig and Whistle, and finally to the Black and White. Now these two blokes had never ever done a pub crawl like that in their life, where we're driving driving down the road, rotten drunk, singing and carrying on, waiting for the next pub. So when they were leaving, they said, well, before they were leaving, in the last one of the last things they said in the black and white, is there anything else we can come back for? And I said, yes. I know where there's these caves that are full of moa bones, which they were. So, bang, you see the sparks go off in the head. Gee, we've got another trip back here. They said, well, leave it to us. We'll work on it and see how we go. Julie, I got a letter saying, this is in 1963. A letter came saying we will arrive on so-and-so and we'll have Ron Scarlett from the Canterbury Museum. I knew Ron, I'd met him once or twice at Karamea. He was a Karamea Scarlet. He was the ornithologist at the museum. And he was bringing some bloke by the name of Owen Wilkes. And I never knew anything about him. I learnt later he became a peace campaigner. He'd been to Antarctic. He was an out there bushman, sort of a city type bushman, you know. So we went and took boxes and boxes of moa bones out of the caves, and these two blokes came and made the movie of it. And of course it was a very big highlight for me to get a letter saying that it will be shown in the Westport St James Theatre on such and such and such and such a day. And then the thing got in the paper to say it was going to happen. So by the time it happened at the movies, then everybody was there. And they kept singing, one of these days you'll see me in the movies at me. So at half time I bloody went and hid round at the men's toilet. Do you want to go to the toilet, love?
Huh?
What's wrong?
I don't know.
No, you'd need a pair of gumboots to get across there.
Okay.
What's wrong?
And she's
It's got to move.
Oh.
Vera's got poor circulation,
Ah.
so if
You
she sits still a
need
bit
to
long,
walk around a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was a big highlight for me. And the Nile Caves virtually came out there. And this thing that's happening now is just growing like you wouldn't believe. There's the very latest Wilderness magazine pumps me up like I'm the man that discovered the cave. But for many years there were other people reckoned that they'd discovered them. They can't escape it now because my dog marks are right through the caves when I was there in the early 60s exploring them. You get the latest Wilderness magazine, it's got a thing on the West Coast done by that advanced Northern West Coast. Well, I abhor that. I do not call us Northern West Coast. We're Buller. And I was very proud to see you in the paper this week talking about Buller. And you just talked about Buller. I'm not from West Coast. I'm from Buller, and so's Punakaiki. In the early days, when we built the gold mine, now there's another highlight, you see. And we got a Tourist Design Award for that in 1977. We went to Parliament, topped it up with the politicians. It was quite a bit of a joke, because if you look at the newspaper photo, the Minister of Tourism is a Mr. Lapwood, and he's good 2 inches shorter than me, at the height of Tangles. And when it come time for the handshake and the photos for the paper, the photographer and Mr. Lapwood moved around to the bottom set of the set of stairs, and he stepped up on the bottom step. So me and Val have got a fairly cynical look on our faces. And the whole life has been just one total interest to another. People say, what was it like growing up in Charles? It must have been a pretty lonely place. I can remember when there was less than 50 people from Fox River to the Big Totara, and most of them were old people. But I put it like this: we had it better than Tom Sawyer's and Huckleberry Finn. They were just stuck on one big flat river. We had sea, mountains, sandhills, gold mines, coal mines, timber mills. The out there for us was just limitless. We were told never go up into the high limestone, because if you fall down one of those crevices, if you don't freeze to death before you hit the bottom, the big eels will get you. Now, if you ever throw stone down a big crevice and it hits the bottom, it goes boom, and then you hear sploop, 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 as the waves hit all the overhanging walls. But we always thought it was the big eels coming out to get you. So we kept very well clear of them. And the mine shafts were a danger to us too. We were always told if you were in the thick fern in the Manuka, always have a stick in front of you if it looks suspicious from the ground. So you got a gold claim that's got a set of tables twice the size of this hut. It extends out. It was known as the Phoenix, and it was operated by Johnny and Les Powell down on the 9 Mile Beach. They used the water from the Cronenville water race, which come across in a 2-foot pipe, and they had a blow up, and it sucked the sand into the pipe and blew it up over the tables. Well, we used to go down into there, and the old workings would fill up with water. They're in the sandhills, like a beautiful big green lake, and was one of our favourite swimming holes. You could go to bays that would be 2 feet deep. You could go to bays that were 10 feet deep. It was just endless, and the fishing was always good, and the sea, and the rivers with the trout too, yeah, and the eels, yeah.
Well, we were, I think, suffering from the cold.